Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona, and feel free to submit your questions in the chat bar, and we will attempt to answer them. We will prioritize our live questions. I want to just mention that if your question is not answered in this one or in a few around this time, we have a large collection of questions and answers, which are on our website, Birken Forest Monastery's website. So we're collecting all of these questions and answers and systematically categorizing them, so you can search on our website, on the Birken Forest Monastery website, for answers to your questions. And of course, there are almost 300 videos on this YouTube channel, which encompass all kinds of topics extensively. So you can find short answers, summaries, medium-length inquiries, and then exhaustive explorations of topics as well. Let's go to our first question today, Pia.
Ajahn, the first question is from the live chat from Vivacious Girl 921. Hello, Ajahn. What would be your advice to someone who has a history of child sexual abuse, along with physical and emotional abuse? For years, I have worked on my pain in different ways, being in therapy, sharing with friends, crying, venting, trying to accept that it was not my fault, etc. But it doesn't stay in my forefront much. However, when I look at myself, my habit patterns and belief systems, I often come to a place where I feel that years of abuse in different forms has created this needy, angry, desperate person who is also scared to move on and work on oneself.
Yeah, Buddhism and meditation have answers for trauma, and it's not exclusive to psychology or psychotherapy. You know, the Western psychotherapy approaches the issue from a different angle than does Buddhism. We're shocked and feel resentful about abuse and violence, and we feel victimized sometimes, and we wonder. We have self-doubts, and then we think, were we part of it? Did we encourage it? All this kind of waffling and wavering, and psychology attempts to address it by talking about it. So a therapist will just say, "No, you weren't responsible. You're a child," and all this kind of stuff. So this is the talking approach to it, and it's a linear, discursive type of thing. However, quite often it bounces off this. It doesn't seem to finally solve the problem. It can help, certainly it can help to have, other voices support the fact that you were entirely innocent in this, and encouragement. Okay, you must get on with this. Now there's going to be different advice about what to do about the thoughts, intrusive thoughts, memory flashes. Should you investigate them, or should you let them go? The problem with this is that what's happening is you're talking to a person. The traumatized person is, in other respects, perhaps their minds work in an ordinary way, and the ordinary mind can't really solve these problems because it's working in an ordinary way, and you're getting advice back from the therapist, who is also probably working from an ordinary point of view with their mind. I mean, they might be able to do a PhD at the university and so forth. Shows intelligence, but it doesn't necessarily show any types of development that we would aim for in Buddhist practice. Buddhist practice is psychology, and it's a psychology which is attempting to push beyond normal psychology. So we do exercises instead of inquiry exercises like exploring your own personal history. This kind of exploration, we're exploring, the exploration is like what is a person? So we explore questions like, what is the body? Not your body, but everybody's body. What is it? What are feelings? What are sensations? What are bodily sensations? What are emotional sensations? What should we do about emotional sensations? What should we do about anger and desire and agitation and confusion and depression? What should we do about that? Should we just be an observer of it? Are we at the mercy of it? Is it our human nature, which is not to be dismissed, but to be wallowed in? Are we a character in a novel? So this is where we're coming from in the West. These are therapies in the West are attempts at scientific inquiries, and it's the abandonment of sort of religious views of things. Has it worked? I don't know. Can science, like the basic science, the real sort of hardcore science is basically physics, and after you go from physics, you might have a reasonable chance at chemistry as a hard science, hard, predictable inquiry. But once you get to biology, let alone psychology, does any of this really apply? Does physics in any way apply to human psychology? They're trying to bring these methods to it, Buddhism is primarily to get over these traumas, and is the practice of meditation. And meditation is just a borrowed word from English. These are repetitive exercises of the mind. This is not mystical. By the way, I was watching a little clip the other day about, I think it was Richard Dawkins going to talk to a Tibetan monk about why Westerners go to study these mystical teachings of Buddhism. Richard Dawkins, the biologist, the evolutionary biologist from Oxford or Cambridge, he's very dismissive of religions, especially the theistic religions. I think not so much I think he allows that Buddhism might have some psychological benefits, but he's using the word mystical. These mystical, Westerners just going there because they like mysticism or something? This is the problem is that somebody like that totally does not understand what Buddhism is teaching. It's not mystical. It's the most advanced form of scientific practices for the mind. And there's nothing mystical about it. If you repeat certain types of activities with your mind, it will benefit and it will train itself. It's trainable. In other words, the mind is trainable. And we harness these things. Now, we have an attitude. You start, well, where do you start? What do you want to get rid of? There are whole people out there that don't want to get rid of anger, or they don't want to get rid of desire. They don't want to get rid of depression or agitation. It's a human experience, and this and that. So right off the bat, where are you starting from? Buddhism does want to get rid of these things. It does want to be completely free of greed, anger, and confusion and delusion. It is, Western thought patterns don't even have categories for this. But Buddhism is very asserting this, and it asserts that you can do this, and that you systematically practice this. And it's not an inquiry into your personal history. That's not what we're doing. So you have to sit down for many hours. And this is like, it's not a pill that you take, and it's not something you can do in 5 minutes either. Well, I'm busy, I have a busy life. Is there something I can could you shorten this up a little bit? No, we can't shorten it up. Do you want to free yourself from all this suffering or not? And what else is more important in your life? So you're going to have to spend a lot of time. And a lot of time is not chit-chatting with the therapist. It's systematically training the mind not to go into the past unless requested, and not to go into the future unless requested, and just to remain here in the presence at this place at this time on request. And if your mind has not been trained, it can't do that. That's why no matter you had a nice conversation about how you weren't part of the situation that traumatized you, but you can't remember it. It floods into your mind, and you haven't been told of a technique that allows this not to happen. So this is simple. It's not an intellectual thing. It's weightlifting. You're just doing reps again and again and again. You take an object such as the breath. You pay attention to your own breathing as it comes through the nasal cavity. You just locate your mind on this. And then, of course, most people, with brilliant people, astrophysicists and brain surgeons and concert violinists, they can't do this. They sit down for 2 seconds, they're gone. The mind is gone because it's never been trained this way. So you're training your mind in an unusual way to stay here now with something that is not a storyline or a discursive activity. It's not about the future or the past. It's simply the experience of the present. And of course it goes away, it wanders, and you bring it back, and it wanders, and you bring it back thousands of times, tens of thousands of times, until one day it stays. And then you start to have control. You can control your mind. And that is how the trauma problem is solved, is that you have control of the mind. And you have a philosophical outlook as well. And the outlook is not that this shouldn't have happened, that this was a terrible injustice and cruelty. The philosophical outlook is this is what happens to vulnerable, sensitive human beings when they're born into this world. This world is dangerous, full of the possibilities of psychological and physical pain. It's not a strange experience. It's almost inevitable. And then you have to develop a philosophy around this. You aren't shocked and offended by it, because that's what it is to be born as a human. And what you make of this information is to strategize, is to develop these processes of mind that allow you to be in this world without excessive suffering. So this is the approach of Buddhism versus the other. Now, if your conversations with your therapist and friends and so forth have helped, that's great. But in order to go on to really overcome this, one needs to practice this philosophical outlook and meditation, strengthening the capacities of the mind in this way. And sorry, it takes time. You can't just fool around and live a normal, so-called normal life. A normal life just sets you up for shock and suffering. We just have to face it. We have to turn away from just entertaining ourselves all the time and making other priorities than our inner life. And our inner life is the priority, and it takes a lot of time and work. And we get the results. So this is a very, very important subject. I wanted to prioritize that question. And that Buddhism is a therapy. There's all kinds of psychologists that don't think meditation is a therapy, but what the problem is that what do you mean by meditation? What are you chanting mantras or something? Or what do you mean? So you have to be very specific. What are you talking about? And what's your experience with meditation? In order to have any opinion about it at all, I want to know if you're an advanced and practiced meditator. Otherwise, your opinions, like Richard Dawkins' ideas about mysticism or something, he has no experience of meditation. Why does he have an opinion about it? So this is, and psychologists can be this way too. So unless you have a strong and long practiced meditation practice, then your opinion is worthless. I probably should do some more talks on this. I've touched on this there's two talks I've given on Western psychology versus Buddhist psychology, or modern psychology versus Buddhist psychology. And so you can get a few suggestions from that. But right around this trauma thing, yes, meditation can be very, very effective, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of work. Yeah. Let's go on to the next question, Pia.
Ajahn, the next question, I'm going to combine two into one. The first is from Tyler in Tennessee, United States. Would you please explain the process of reversing dependent origination as a practical practice? And the second comes from a pre-submitted question from Abaya in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Would you please consider giving a series of talks on dependent origination?
Yeah, so just for the general audience, you might not be familiar with this. What are they talking about? Dependent origination. Dependent origination, paticca samuppada is the Pali terminology for this, is considered to be sort of the most sophisticated of the Buddha's teachings. It is really just another version of the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path in itself is expressing elements of dependent origination. So it's causality. Is there causality in the mental and emotional dimension? And does this causal process, is it a coherent causal process? Can you understand it? Can you put in causes that give specific results in the mental and psychological and emotional dimension? And furthermore, does it have effects on the body itself? What's the relationship of your body to the ethical contents of your life, the psychological contents of your life, the emotional contents of your life? Is there a causal relationship? And furthermore, beyond this, is it, for instance, in modern times, we have this idea of genetics, right? Inheritance and genetics. How much of what we are is the result of our genetic structure, which has come from the past, right? It's just, it is delivered through your parents, and it is a complex operating structure that produces your body. Does it? Is this what produces your body? And does it produce your personality tendencies? And then there's others who would say that the elements of the external world, the social world, are affecting this as well. So we're trying to, in the West, in science, we're trying to solve this dependent origination. What makes you? What is it that causes a human to be the way they are? What causes their body to be that way? What causes their intellect to be that way? Is it completely determined by physical causes? Is it social or environmental? Right now in the West with this, it tends to be a combination. So perhaps they say that genetics explains 50% of a person. And then the other 50% must be explained by the environment, the social and physical environment around them. So they attempt to put together these two factors: nature, that is, the influences of biology, genetics, and nurture, the influence of how you were treated in life and so forth. And obviously there's a huge, you're not indifferent to the social experience. So they in order to do this, they take identical twins that are genetically identical, and they look at them when they're raised in a similar environment, and they try to find ones that have been separated at birth, and they try to study them. Are they different? Because they had different environments. How much influence does the environment have versus the genetics? So this is dependent origination. Buddhism is thousands of years earlier, and the Buddha has a bodily and emotional and psychological explanations of why you are the way you are. So this is what dependent origination is. And he says you can alter how you think and feel, and you can even alter the nature of your body, almost the genetic patterns. And this can be done even over lifetimes. So this is what science explains lifetimes. What we explain as karma and rebirth in Buddhism, science explains it as genetic properties transmitted through the combination of sperm and egg. And that is a process of birth. Birth is caused for a reason from the past, and there are causal laws operating in there. We suggest that consciousness itself is a process which departs from the body at death, and is a causal flux, a river of events that influences its arrival in another body. That the consciousness and body-mind are these interdependent forces that are playing out in the person. Now, this is not, you will not get general agreement in science, just on hardcore science. Some scientists, physicists, and so forth. See, the problem is that consciousness itself is a great problem for science. And it has not been resolved in any way. There are people who hold that it's purely consciousness is purely a function of the body. It arises in the brain from neuronal connections, electronic circuits, and so forth. That's all it is. There is nothing else but that. Others who are neuroscientists and physicists, etc., say, no, that doesn't explain it. So we're still, science itself has not reached any final, absolutely overwhelming and convincing conclusions about what consciousness is, whether it's a function simply of the body or not. There are camps on both sides of this. Buddhism holds that obviously that the structures of the mind are not completely physical. They are some have some sort of relationship to the body and the brain, etc., but is not exclusively that. So that's what dependent origination is. Now the essence, the whole idea of it is this. When we start with ignorance, which is lack of knowledge of good information, everything that follows from the decisions that you make based on ignorance can have negative consequences. These negative consequences are experienced in the emotional field as suffering, as problematic, intellectual ideas that are distorted, and even indeed physical suffering as well. Like if you have a bad idea about the needs of the body, somebody decides they have an ignorant outlook on that they should just live on cheese doodles, then there's going to be resultants that follow from that. Now, that's an ignorant idea about diet. And they're going to inflict all kinds of emotional and physical distress on themselves because of this basic ignorance. Eventually, they go to the doctor and say, I'm not doing too well. And finally, the doctor finds out they're just living on cheese doodles. So they say, okay, you're completely wrong about that. You need to expand your diet. You need fresh fruit and vegetables and this and that. So they change that diet, and then everything that afterwards, because they're operating on that improved knowledge, they've undone some lack of knowledge and replaced it with good knowledge. Everything after that, so that is going to improve their quality of life and being. That is what dependent origination is in the reverse mode. So in one mode, when you start with bad information, like a bad map, a distorted map, you end up always in the wrong place because you're following the wrong map. And then that's dependent origination beginning with ignorance. The reverse of that is that if we have knowledge, a good map, then we will end up in the place where we want to go. And that's dependent origination in the reverse mode. It's quite simple, actually. I think it was very hard to grasp at the time of the Buddha because a lot of the way the world worked was not processed by people as a causal process. It was a whimsical process, quite often as a result of deities and gods and spirits just doing arbitrary things. And there was no particular system to it. It was arbitrary. So it never occurred to people to look at themselves as a causal process. It's more like scientific process. So the Buddha is introducing this inquiry as are we causal processes? Does the world operate by causal processes? And he concludes, yes, it does. And it's because it is causal that there is hope. There is hope to actually improve and to diminish the suffering that occurs when you do not have a causal process, when you do not understand the causal process. The best way to understand this is the rising of agriculture. Before, there was a phase of like hunter-gatherers, and they just randomly accumulated results of plants growing in the wild. But they didn't understand how this happened or where it happened. It just blunder across some fruit or berries or something like this. And eventually somebody pieced it together that you could probably have these plants in your backyard. If you took some of the plants and put them into the ground near you, they would grow. But how do they grow? What do they need to grow? And they by eventual experience, they have to water it, have to put it in the sun, have to put this one in the shade. This one is too much water. This one needs more water. You can add things to the soil to make it grow. So this is dependent origination. This is causality, and then it changes your entire life. You can support a bigger population. You can get through a period where there are no animals to hunt, etc. So this is the emergence of the causal thinking process, understanding how things work, including the human mind. So this is what it is. This is what Buddhism is. Okay, well, that's a very brief explanation, and I think I answered both. I gave a talk on dependent origination, and I explained what it is in rising from ignorance and then collapsing from knowledge. So, yeah.
Next question is from the live chat from Upasaka Mustafa. Dear Ajahn, in Indo-European languages, the word jhana, J-H-A-N-A, is similar to the Persian word djan, D-J-A-N, meaning life or spirit. When said as jhana, D-J-A-N-A, it takes on a meaning of something that is deeply cherished, enjoyable, and precious, often referring to God, a loved one, or someone who is emotionally significant. Conceptualizing jhana, J-H-A-N-A, as djana, D-J-A-N-A, a treasured, enjoyable experience, would resonate with its Buddhist descriptive nature. I'm curious to know your thoughts on this potential conceptual connection between these terms.
Yeah, that's very nice to hear. What I'm a bit on about this. I'm very immersed in the history of the Buddha and his people, and also the language connections between the Persian and the Pali, the Indo-Aryan languages, the Indo-European connection, all of these things. So in Western history, in general, we tend to focus on the beginning of sophisticated thought as Greek philosophy. And we're aware of the history, the Persian Empire, which preceded the Greek Empire, which was followed by the Roman Empire. So in history, when we look at these things, we're aware of the Middle East. But India and China seem to have dropped off the Western map in some ways. But now we're putting it all back together. We realize there were influences between India and the Middle East, the Persian Empire, and the Persian Empire influencing the India, and also the Greeks influencing India and Persia, of course. So what we see is there are a lot of what are called loan words, L-O-A-N, loan. We borrow words from other languages. So if you go to Thailand and and ask about that thing that's playing the music, it's a radio. There's no Thai word for radio. They're just borrowing like whoever invents it, everybody else borrows the word for it. So you'll be listening to a Russian broadcast, and then they'll say television, like something like that. So yes, where does this word jhana come from? In Sanskrit, by the way, the spelling of jhana, so in Pali, Jhana, in Sanskrit spelling, it's Dhyana. Djana is quite an influence of the D in there. So you can see probably a connection to the Persian word, D-H-A-N, or D-J-A-N, djan, yeah. So there's a lot of borrowing back and forth of this. And I like the way you see that the word has this a beautiful religious connotation, spiritual connotation, this D-J-A-N. And so indeed, it could be the root of this Pali word. These cultures have common roots to them deep in history, going back 5,000 or 6,000 years or more. These cultures split off from each other, and some of them ended up in India, and some of them ended up in the Middle East, and they lost touch with each other, and occasionally they'd encounter each other, and they would see each other as strangers, as foreign cultures, but they're actually old cousins, that used to share the same language. And so you see the roots of these languages have all kinds of common words in them. And there are also common ideas in them. And one culture, this is like Americans versus British, at one time they were the British Empire, and it was in America as Canada and the United States. And then the Americans decided to go their own way. They had a revolution because of these terrible British. And Canadians said, what's wrong with the British? There's nothing wrong with the British. There's no need for a revolution. So the Americans went their own way, and they have a sense of their individual separate identity. And quite often they see the British as very different. Canadians are closer they're actually part of the British Empire in some ways. So this is the way it is with India and the Middle East, and in fact even the steppes of what is now the Caucasus, or etc., Turkey, Russia, the whole business is all interconnected, and they're just generations that were separated, and they started to take on separate cultural ideas. So that's why you find these very interesting overlapping words and cultural ideas. I think another word that we might be familiar with is genie. I think in the Middle East, D-J-I-N, jinn, a djinn. And this becomes a genie in a bottle. You remember you rub the magic lantern and the genie comes out of the bottle, and then you get to ask favors of the genie, and they will make this happen. And this also, I think, becomes the word genius. Genius is people used to have genius, which means it was a kind of a genie that would come to you every now and then and give you favors. It was not you, it was something else. So this is a creative thought, a person had a genie or a genius. He has a genius for music. He has a genius for mathematics. So because these a lot of these ideas seem to be whispered in your ear. You don't feel that it came from you. You'll hear these artists all the time saying, I don't know where that poem came from. I don't know where that music came from. All I can do is wait for it. I can't make it happen. I have to wait for it. So we are inspired. In the modern times, we eliminate that. We call a person a genius. Instead of having a genius, you are a genius. It's the use of this word and it's a twisting of the concept. So this is the nature of this jhana as well. This is a very interesting area of exploration, which that's one of the things I do with my time. Eventually I'll write a few essays about this or make some videos about this stuff. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to we're having a leisurely, in-depth kind of experience today. More lengthy. Okay, let's go to the next question, Pia.
The next question is from the live chat from Tech1. Dear Ajahn Sona, in the Diamond Sutra it says, quote, all conditioned dharmas are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, like dewdrops and a lightning flash. Contemplate them thus, end quote. I can't seem to find a straightforward answer explaining what, quote, conditioned dharmas are. Could you please explain?
Yeah, that's from the Diamond Sutra, which is by the way, a sutra, S-U-T-R-A, sutra. This is a Mahayana, famous Mahayana sutra, composed much after the time of the Buddha. But it's not, it's just language borrowed straight from the Pali Canon, straight from the Buddha. There's nothing strange about it at all. You'll find the exact words in the Pali Canon of that. And all conditioned things are, how does the phrase go? The conditioned...
All conditioned dharmas are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, like dewdrops and a lightning flash. Contemplate them thus.
Yeah, the words in Pali are sabbe, sankhara, or sankhata, anicca. Sabbe meaning all. Sankhata, compounded things or conditioned things, are impermanent or devoid of substance. And then the similes the Buddha gives it's like a dewdrop or foam on a flash of lightning. These shadows and so forth. These are, the human can see this as without essence, without insubstantial. Oh, like a child, when they look at the clouds, they wonder if it's possible to walk on those clouds sometimes. You know, it looks solid. I know puppies and so forth, when they see shadows of themselves, they often are not sure that that's not another dog. Bubbles and foam in water seem solid, but because of experience, we realize that when you grab the foam, it's non-existent. It turns into it's just water in your hands. There's no substance to it. So these are the similes the Buddha gives for conditioned. All phenomena are like this. They are without substance. This is very advanced. This is what Einstein is saying, isn't it? E equals mc squared. So here we go with physics. So you might have heard this and not understood it, but I mean, this is an incredible breakthrough. I think we see it very clearly. If you take a log of wood and put it in the fire. This is a very Canadian experience. You know, this monastery still runs on wood heat, right? We harvest the wood, And it's very, very solid. It's what you build houses out of and so forth. But put it in a fire, and then there's nothing. When you look in there, where'd the wood go? There's just ashes left. And the ashes, there's a few ounces of ashes. What used to weigh 20 pounds is now a half an ounce of ashes. How did that happen? What happened there? But the energy in the wood is released. And so Einstein is saying matter is just dense energy. And what is energy? It's something you can't, it has no substance to it. Energy is just inconceivable. In other words, electricity and so forth is inconceivable. It's the universe, so-called, appears out of energy, like a vast amount of energy, and condenses into this matter. And you see that it can be reconverted into energy. Like, that's the atomic bomb, isn't it? So you take a small amount of matter and release the energy, and the matter turns back into energy. So the Buddha is saying a long time ago, all what appears to be matter or substance is actually is not really substantial, is impermanent and subject to change, and has no real substance to it, and is under it just endlessly transforms and flows. So this is what this means by conditioned reality. Yeah. Okay, well, let's go to the next question here.
The next question is from the live chat from Bodhipala. Longpor, I once heard you pose the rhetorical question, how long does it take to purify your virtue? The answer was seconds. Have I remembered that rightly? And can you explain?
Right. So the first part of the path, the Eightfold Path, is virtue and the purification of virtue. Now, what if you've been a mischievous type, unvirtuous type? How long is the process which it takes to become virtuous? Because apparently, when virtue is attained, then what the benefits that follow is that the mind becomes lucid and focused, and in a pleasant way. So this is what's called samadhi. Sila, samadhi, panya. These are the Pali words. Sila is virtue. Samadhi is lucidity of mind. And panya is wisdom. And wisdom regarding what leads to well-being and what leads to ill-being, negative results. So the Eightfold Path is, in a summary, is divided into three parts. This virtue, concentration, and wisdom. So how long does it take to get from unvirtuous to virtuous? And how long does it take after you get to virtue, like virtuous person, sila, then how long does it take to get to samadhi, concentration? There is no time structure to it. You don't have to be, okay, after you're unvirtuous, it takes you 10 years to eventually get virtuous. And then after you're completely virtuous, then it's a gradual process to samadhi. No, it doesn't necessarily take any of those. It could be just a finger snap between being an unvirtuous person to being a virtuous person. But so your past does not determine your present state. You may have been unvirtuous, and then the moment you understand virtue, you are now a virtuous person. that fast. And the reason why is that you're not a thing going through time. You're not a steel ball bearing going down a ramp. You are a series of dominoes knocking into each other. You are a process. And if the unvirtuous, if the Dhamma, if the dominoes, let's make a new word, dominoes. DHAMMINO, domino. If the series of thought moments knocking into each other, if there's a gap, the last one falls over and doesn't knock into the next one. Or you have one of those arrangements where a single row of dominoes branches out into two, and one of them ceases and the other one is initiated. The new branch of dominoes is the virtuous ones. So these are thought moments that a series of thought moments that are unvirtuous, and then some sort of influence comes in. Somebody outside says, do it this way and it'll be better. And you think, okay, I'll try it. And then at that moment, virtue arises. And then with the rising of virtue, instantly following arises a new clarity of mind, a change of perspective, a whole bodily, emotional tone is experienced throughout the body. Both throughout your emotional body and your physical body, you feel differently. And then as a result of this, wisdom follows, meaning that you understand why you feel well. Not only are you well and happy, but you know why you're well and happy. Yeah. So this is the relationship between this virtue, concentration, and wisdom. Sila, samadhi, panya. And let's go to one more question.
Next question is from Upasaka Christian in Cambridge, Massachusetts, United States. I've heard some Ajahns, for example, Ajahn Mun, and some modern-day teachers refer to the citta in ways that sound almost like it's permanent, even going as far to say that it exists outside the 5 aggregates. This can sometimes seem conflicting with the suttas. Could you please elaborate on what is meant by this?
Yeah, there is a kind of a language there, the one who knows. This is a type of sort of translation of this, the one who knows. From a Buddhist point of view, like the technical Buddhist analysis, which is what's called abhidhamma, they go into these processes of the mind, all of the 5 khandhas. And it certainly is very clearly said by the Buddha that there is not a self is not found in the 5 khandhas nor outside the 5 khandhas. The 5 khandhas are the body, feelings, perception, consciousness, and volition, and that is the totality of what a human is. And within those 5 things, a atta, a kind of identity, a permanent identity is not found, neither inside nor outside that. So all of those are processes. And the citta are mental processes. This is defined in the abhidhamma as, more or less thought moments. And they go into great elaborate detail, analyzing them, relating them. There's 52 types of consciousness, etc. Consciousness is usually associated with types of feelings and causes. Consciousness arising from the sights and sounds, smells, taste, touches, and mental processes. In the suttas, citta is most beautifully described in in Chitta and Upasana, in the four foundations of mindfulness, as just awareness of mental emotional processes. Are you angry or not? Greedy or not? Deluded or not? Is your mind expansive or contracted? Surpassable or unsurpassable? So this is what how the suttas would treat this citta. You hear language in that certain parts of the forest tradition, not all parts of it, with perhaps Ajahn Mun. By the way, in terms of awareness of Ajahn Mun, quite often it's the result of the biographer of Ajahn Mun, which is Ajahn Mahabua. Quite often these things are Ajahn Mahabua is recording what Ajahn Mun said. But there are other versions of what Ajahn Mun said as well. So the most famous is Ajahn Mahabua's, but there is the first biography of Ajahn Mun was written by another monk named Ajahn Viryan, and it preceded the biography, which is written by Ajahn Mahabua, and they are in conflict. They do not agree with each other, and I've met both of them, both Ajahn Viryan and Ajahn Mahabua. They were elderly gentlemen elderly gentle monks when I met them. In terms of Ajahn Mahabua, I could not converse, directly with him. He didn't speak English, and I don't speak Thai very well, or even understand it very well. But I did have a personal conversation with Ajahn Viryan on several occasions, and he could speak some English as well. And I asked his opinions about Ajahn Mahabua's versions of things, and he was somewhat dismissive of those things and had his own take on it. So we must treat these things with careful consideration. And I would say that the type of language there that is used there is rather unorthodox. And if you want the orthodox version, you just have to look at the suttas. And that is the word in the suttas the Buddha is apparently advising, no matter how famous the monks are, how many thousands of them say this or that, always check it against the suttas and see if it agrees. And if it doesn't agree, then set it aside. So this is how you solve these, because there are monks who are probably very well grounded in the practice, very well attained, but they have different ways of expressing things which are perhaps not as cogent or in line with the Buddha's teaching. What the mark of the Buddha is, what he says is, there are lots of my monks have attained enlightenment, even full enlightenment, arahantship, but none of them can teach as well as I do. None of them express it as cogently and coherently as I do. So always go back to the word of the Buddha as the sort of authoritative guide to what the Buddha is teaching, not surprisingly. So if you have conflicts or doubts about this, then you set it aside and go back to the suttas. Yeah. Okay, so we're at the end of our day here. I spent a little bit more time and depth on these questions today, and we will be back next week if karma is cooperative.